All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Nathan Pacer, and I'm the Bitcoin market lead for Venture Scanner. I'd like to welcome everybody to our inaugural live Google Hangout chat. This particular panel will focus on those working in the Bitcoin exchange industry. We've scheduled probably 30 to 40 minutes of chat time. And the first thing I like to do is to have the panel introduce themselves. Let's go ahead and start with Alex. Would you mind sort of letting us know who you are, what company you're from, and sort of a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My pleasure, Nathan. Thank you. My name's Alex Liu. I'm the co-founder and CEO of MaiCoin. We're an Asia-focused Bitcoin services platform encompassing exchange, wallet, and merchant API services. We're a venture-funded company at this point in time and have people in Taiwan as well as in Palo Alto.
Cool. You want to tell us a little bit about sort of what makes your company special out there?
Sure. I think it's two things. The first of which is a very strong technology base. Our team is led by a PhD computer scientist. So we think we can go toe-to-toe with any platform out there on the technology side. And we also foresee a day where analytics, which is actually the expertise of our technical lead, will become much more important, whether that's mining the blockchain, whether that's providing transaction statistics to customers, or perhaps even the authorities one day. The other leg of our story really is regional expertise. So to the extent that we integrate with banks in the region, starting in the Greater China region, but also the way we interact with regulators and ultimately the lawmakers in each jurisdiction that we operate, we think that going deep in this way actually will confer a competitive advantage in the long term. So it's really a two-part story: technology and local expertise.
Excellent. All right, cool. Let's go ahead and have Anthony. Would you please mind telling us who you are, a little bit about your company, and what kind of makes you guys special?
Hi there. I work at itBit, which is a digital currencies exchange based in Singapore. We've raised over $5 million in venture cap funding. The markets we trade are right now just Bitcoin versus US dollars, Sing dollars, and euros. Our focus is very much on compliance, so that's know your customer and anti-money laundering. And by know your customer, I don't really just mean know who he is, but also make sure you do all the right background checks to the same standards that banks do for their private banking clients. So compliance is a big thing for us, and working together with regulators to try and shape the regulation of Bitcoin. That's something that's very important to us. The compliance procedures we currently use have been designed by senior people from the US Treasury. Our staff are mainly finance professionals, so we've got 10 full-time staff. As I said, we're headquartered in Singapore. We have 5 staff full-time there. New York is our tech hub, 3 developers. Our CEO sits in Shanghai, and we have a few other part-time in various locations. As for me, my job title says business development. So what that means is it's a sales advisory role. I do spend a lot of time talking to institutional clients, so hedge funds. We've slightly moved on from what is Bitcoin towards more I'm interested, I get it, how do I trade it, what do you offer, those kind of questions. And I do a little bit of product development as well. And my personal background, I came from Credit Suisse in Singapore, where I was leading an FX technology team. So building the kind of click and trade systems that we used in Credit Suisse. Before that, I was a FX spot trader at Barcap in London, and before that, I was a management consultant in London. So the trends we're seeing, the Singapore dollar market has surprised us. We thought the action was going to be in US dollars, but Singapore's started to understand Bitcoin. People are starting to get it, and that's really taken off. What other trends? Other trends, the attitudes towards Bitcoin is changing almost weekly. I go out a lot and I talk to a lot of people, and week on week the questions are changing, the tone is changing. People have stopped talking about why does it have value, which is a bit more fun.
All right, I can agree with that. And now, Jesse, would you mind taking a turn to listen a little bit about your company, what makes the company special, and maybe a little bit about your background?
Sure. First off, thanks so much for having me, Nathan. Apologize to everyone out there. We're having Wi-Fi issues here, so I have the video off. My name is Jesse Heaslip. I'm the CEO of Bex.io. We're a white label Bitcoin exchange platform based in Vancouver, British Columbia. So our business model is to take all the repeatable parts of operating a Bitcoin exchange, so all the tech parts, and we build the software here in Vancouver, and we find partners all over the world that manage the non-repeatable parts, which is the local banking, compliance, and regulatory issues for each exchange. So it's and then we split the transaction fees with the partner. So it's a pretty straightforward model, I think. We're just taking what's a proven model, which is the exchange, and kind of cookie cutting it around the world. We're funded as well. We have customers that have paid us as well, which is great. That's basically more or less our business. My background came from business school. I taught myself how to code, worked as a developer at a number of different startups all over the world. So coming more from the development and the Bitcoin is cool side than the finance and sort of money management side of the coin, but we're adding some folks who have a really deep domain knowledge in that space. So excited for the next year. Our team's currently at 9, and I imagine we'll be 3 or 4 times that by the end of the year.
All right, thank you. So yeah, so I think for the listeners out there who are not on the panel, there should be, for those who aren't who aren't used to Google Hangout, if you sort of scroll on the left side, you'll see a little tab there that says Q&A. For those who are out there, feel free to submit your questions. If you do that, we're going to be monitoring that, and I'll moderate some of those questions in here. So if you'd like to sort of maybe get something specific from these guys, feel free to submit that question. But I have a couple of questions prepared for myself to get the thing started. And the first one that I'd like to ask is sort of about how does one differentiate an exchange from another? If I wanted to be sort of a devil's advocate here, I could say one exchange is the same as another. I'm just sort of using it as a means to trade with somebody else. So what are the types of things that an exchange can do to sort of convince a potential user why they should be using their exchange over somebody else? And Jesse, because you guys are sort of the white label generic one, I thought that you might have an interesting thought on this too, as sort of maybe thinking about what's repeatable or not repeatable. So if you wouldn't mind, maybe going first.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's been brought up to us a lot before, and the general feedback is technology is a bar that you have to get over, and certainly, I mean, we're building with Erlang, we're functional programmers, we feel we're comfortable over that bar. Security is a bar that you have to get over, and there's no question that's a huge issue in this space. But really, the feedback we've been receiving from a lot of different folks is just how to creatively market the site. The exchange space is going to become essentially ubiquitous in a very, very short period of time, especially with plays like ours if we become successful. And the other thing that I don't think anybody's done well yet, that we're going to spend a lot of time and effort on, is just the onboarding process for the exchanges is brutal on a lot of them. So that's really where we're going to, technology, extremely important, security, extremely important. We have good teams here looking at those problems, and the next teams that we look, for growth internally at least, will be on sort of the design, the marketing, and the user experience side.
Cool. Now, Anthony, if you wouldn't mind going next, sort of in your mind, just sort of generically, how same question, how should a consumer sort of look at what are the types of things a consumer should weigh when looking at an exchange?
Yeah, so I definitely see this changing, and when talking to some of the more serious investors, they're looking at credibility. So just some of the things off the top of my head, the regulatory environment of where your headquarters are. I think just because Bitcoin's global and the internet's global, I still think it makes a difference where you're incorporated, especially as they're your home regulator. banks spend a lot of time and money working out where they want to be based, and I think this industry is going to go the same way. So again, to Jesse's point on the onboarding process, our onboarding process is pretty tricky. You've got to submit a lot of documents, but some of our clients like that. It gives them the confidence that we're not letting just anyone on, and the people we do let on have been fully vetted, so we're not crossing their liquidity with bad actors. I think capitalization is important. One of the first few questions people ask us is, so are you just a couple of kids in garages, or do you have a real outfit? And I think that all three of us on the panel have been funded, and I think it is a hurdle to get through, and it adds a lot of credibility. Attitude of staff towards regulation and security. I think we're moving away from everyone's a libertarian and Bitcoin's really cool towards
a vast virus database has been updated.
That's good. So as I was saying, attitude towards security. We're moving away from this is all really cool, and we'll anti-establishment towards more credible people. So that talks to cold storage, the way we store our clients' funds. And speaking of storing clients' funds, I've had the first few queries about how we insure our funds. So if a client leaves Bitcoin with us, what guarantees does he have that if we get hacked, he gets some of his money back? So that's starting to become important, especially as Bitcoin gets more valuable and people put more money towards it. So the staff and background of the staff adds to credibility. People one of the comments that I heard was, "Hey, your exchange is great because you are real people. You have LinkedIn profiles." And we kind of like that we can reach out to you and you're accessible. Then you look at uptime. A lot of exchanges go down a lot, and when you, especially in, and this is industry-wide, I think, especially in periods of volatility. So if you're there when the market's volatile and people know it, I think that's very important to traders. Internal processes was something that's also very important. People don't know what to expect when they're depositing and withdrawing funds. So some people say, "Oh, it only took a week. That's really short." Some people say, "A week. That's totally unacceptable." And I think going forward, you're going to start to see people start to understand how long banking transfers actually take, and the fact that exchanges don't want to take credit risk, so they have to cite the funds in their bank account before they'll credit the customers with their accounts, and different exchanges take different amounts of time to do that, and the same with withdrawals. So I think they've become more important. I think if you asked me a few months ago, it would have been liquidity, price, commissions, that kind of thing. But I haven't had price discussions for quite a long time. Okay.
Okay, excellent. And now, Alex, if you don't mind sort of taking a swing, what sort of things should a customer care about?
Yeah, if I can, do the union or the join of what Jesse and Antony just said, I would say that probably the exchange or the service provider who comes closest in the shortest order of time to emulating, the customer's experience with a reputable bank, of course, minus all the fees and so on and so forth, or at least lower fees. And I think there are technological aspects of this. When you go to a Citi or HSBC, you expect that they've done a good enough job with their IT so that your funds are not hacked. On the institutional trust side, completely agree with Antony that depositors insurance, whether that's government provided or sold by a private insurer, is also key to building that bank-like experience. And I couldn't agree more on Antony on the point that jurisdictions where you domicile yourself actually matters quite a bit. There are clear reasons to domicile yourself in Singapore, given how far it's come along as a banking hub. But I think that yes, to summarize, I think the platforms that have really gotten a lot of user attention and usage have really come closest to emulating your traditional banking experience.
All right, cool. Thank you. Anybody have any other thoughts that they'd like to share on this particular issue of sort of what the feature sets are of an exchange should be? And if not, I'll move on to the next question.
One of the things we spend a lot of time thinking about is just the fact that there's going to be thousands of digital currencies with some portion of value into them, and are people going to want to trade those in amongst themselves? Probably, and it's clearly beyond Bitcoin. I mean, we can get into the debate about are alt currencies valuable and do they have value, but they're clearly going to be more and more of them. And so, what does that look like in terms of an interface? Like, how can you? Is it like an app store? How does the discoverability work? If someone cares about Litecoin, do they also care about Feathercoin? Is that a draw you can, and you're more likely to suggest that that coin to them? I think there's all sorts of issues in UI UX that are coming through with all these new altcoins, and that's something that we're considering, at least as from a feature set perspective.
Cool. Okay, so moving on to the next topic I'd like to talk about is, I think sort of one of the key, this is sort of a supposition that I'd love you guys to sort of give your thoughts on is, what's the key metric of success or metrics of success for an exchange? Is it volume? Is it, is it just the price points as it moves around? You know, how should from a business flow point of view, how would an exchange sort of consider itself successful? And then sort of taking maybe more of a broader look, you know, if volume is one of those metrics, you know, how do you guys see that evolving over time? How will the amount of volume of trading increase over time, and how will exchanges sort of enhance that capability and sort of encourage that? So maybe this time we'll go with Antony, if you don't mind, because we can give you a chance to go first.
Gosh, okay, so how do you define being successful? Right now, I don't think it's profitability. I think you can run a successful exchange that's losing money. I think this is about the future. So I think market share is a key metric. If I was an investor looking to invest in any one of a handful of exchanges abroad, it would be what's your positioning, what's your attitude towards various things that we've talked about in the previous question, and what's your current market share, and why do you think that's going to grow? Is it your positioning? Is it your marketing? Or what is it? I think the uptime, being able to track and prove that you have better uptime than other exchanges is a criteria for success. Security, if you're hacked all the time, I don't think you can consider yourself very successful. And perception to customers. Now, depending on your focus, do you want to have a good perception towards institutional customers or retail customers, or is it a specific country that you care about? I think some exchanges are trying to be all things to all people, and I don't think that's going to work going forwards. I think you'll see exchanges focusing on a particular demographic, a particular type of customer, or a particular geography, or something else I haven't thought of. And you might be very successful in that niche, but I don't think it's going to be easy to be the one global single point of focus. Just the same with FX.
Excellent, cool. Alex, would you like to give your thoughts on how would you define success?
Sure. Yeah, I think at this point it's probably worthwhile to distinguish between two primary sorts of exchanges. The first of which is I'd call it a C2C or a consumer-to-consumer exchange, for lack of a better term. So this is an open order book, right? That has, I think the best way perhaps to summarize this is as a price discovery mechanism. This is what the market in this particular locale will bear for a single coin. The other type of exchange is something closer to resembling a bank, right? You have both the buy-sell service, but you also have the depositors, the deposits rather. And so I would say that for these two type of models, there are probably different metrics. The first of which is probably, I think market share, as Antony mentioned, trade volume, and so forth. And there's nothing preventing that model from being profitable. But the second model, I would say, is it veers more to the trustworthiness. Have you been hacked? What kind of how much in assets you have under management, and so forth. And so, yeah, I think the metrics are different, and it depends on which model you pursue. I also agree with Antony that you probably can't be both or everything to everyone at the same time.
Okay. So now, thank you. Now, Jesse, I know you've been having some internet trouble, but if you're around, would you like to weigh in?
Yeah, sorry, I missed the entire last answer there. I think I agree with the first answer there, more or less, that market share is really, really important right now. You can see the exchange space, like the transaction fees, there's so much downward pressure on them already. We're at 0% in China for a while. Or at least, yeah, BTC China has come back up a little bit. So that's the sort of the future trend, is the transaction fees are gonna approach zero, if not zero, and it's going to be the users and the value that you can extract some other way out of that. So maybe it's, you know, you're selling, you know, the Heartbeat Bitcoin wallets that came out this week, and you're selling those through your site, and you're making your profit margin there. Like market share, especially early right now, is the one metric that we're certainly targeting.
Excellent, excellent. Any other thoughts from the panel real quick before we move on this topic? Okay. So the next question, or the next sort of topic that I like to maybe sort of explore, is a lot of the questions, one of the main questions we get from investors a lot is, how will sort of the consolidation take place in the exchange marketplace, if at all? You know, I can see a world where it's very difficult to establish local relationships, and so you sort of have a, you know, scattered, fragmented market. I can also see a world where you sort of have one overarching dominant player who then, you know, has sort of maybe sort of local subsidiaries. So, and this is speculative, but sort of in your mind, based upon sort of the trends and stuff that you're seeing, how do you see that developing over time? And I'd like to maybe throw this to Alex to sort of take the first swing.
I actually think that the end game is not so much what folks like us on the panel are doing in terms of technology or marketing or banking relationships. I think the end game is actually on a jurisdictional basis, which government in the world will have the foresight and the vision to actually pursue, you know, a set of policies that are favorable to the development of digital currencies, and companies like ours will tend to gravitate towards such jurisdictions, or there will be homegrown companies in those jurisdictions that become dominant, and as a result will engage in consolidation, either by, you know, putting competitors out of business or buying them up. And so, you know, the role that people like us do have is convincing regulators in the places we do business that there's a case to be made for kind of foresighted, or you know, regulations with a lot of foresight. So I think the better question is, will traditional money centers, be it New York City or London or Hong Kong or Singapore, remain, you know, as prominent as they are today in a future world where digital currencies play a large role? Or will some dark horse place, you know, God knows, Malta or New Zealand or some place like that, emerge as a future money center? And so I think that's actually the cue we're looking toward, which government, which jurisdiction actually has that vision and foresight.
Okay, cool. So Jesse, if you'd like to sort of weigh in on the issue.
Yeah, sure. I couldn't agree more with that last statement. And Canada's been super supportive of Bitcoin. So pretty much from the start. We're also, I believe, the only country in the world where the government has their own digital currency that's been released through the Royal Canadian Mint. And you're seeing the results of that, like in terms of the Ethereum project coming out of Toronto. You know, there's a lot of really, really cool things that are starting to sprout up in Canada as a result of having a favorable government. And it's the exact opposite, unfortunately, you know, in the US, where they're spending a lot of time fighting regulatory issues, and that's really going to hurt their innovation going forward. And you can see the US starting to come around to that and starting to focus more on how can we help the entrepreneurs versus hinder them? Because this piece of technology is going to come regardless of whether or not there is regulation. Second point is in terms of decentralizing the exchange network or how it will evolve. Obviously, our bet is completely on, at least in these early stages, complete decentralization of the exchange space. Right? We see again that it's going to get fenced in by the regulatory issues of each country. What the future, I have no idea. Will it reconsolidate, and will one exchange essentially become the global dominant player? I could see it playing out that way, and there's certainly investors we've spoken to that are insistent on that's the end result. I believe, in Bitcoin as being as decentralized as it is, it kind of goes against that to have a single fail point, but I could be proven entirely wrong as well.
Okay, thank you. Antony, if you wouldn't mind sort of weighing in on the thoughts of consolidation or fragmentation.
Sure. Just to echo Alex and Jesse's point, really. Without repeating what they're saying, something to add. I think we'll end up with 3 to 5 larger players catering to different markets. We may see local subsidiaries catering for specific niches for various regulatory reasons. Maybe somewhere it's very difficult, and then someone local's found a way to make it work, and they want to borrow a brand of a bigger player. And I think that's where we'll see subsidiaries. I think in terms of consolidation, pricing. One of the questions that people always ask is why can't I arb between exchanges? And my answer is go ahead, try it. As exchanges become more credible, as they become easier to use and better at doing stuff, especially regarding deposits and withdrawals, you will see more aligned pricing globally, just like the FX markets. So liquidity will cross exchanges. Right now, we don't see a lot of crossing between itBit and let's say GOX, for example. And we think that's due to different people having different reasons to use different exchanges. To Alex's point, traditional money centers, so we're talking the Londons, New York, Singapore. I'm really impressed by how Lawski's dealing with New York. If the Feds aren't doing anything, he's going to do it. And if anyone hasn't watched those hearings, they're well worth watching. The problem with traditional money centers, the more established they are, the slower moving they tend to be, because you get more incumbents who have a bit more power to slow things down and figure out how they can deal with digital currencies. So you've got this balance between kind of bigger elephants versus smaller, more nimble countries that can throw out some regulation there, and they don't have as many hoops to jump through before they can pass law. In that respect, Singapore's a very interesting place because while it is a traditional money center, it's also pretty fast moving in terms of how quickly it can do stuff if it wants to. We were pretty upset that Charlie Schroen's backup plan was to run to Singapore when he got arrested. That upsets us. I don't see Singapore as a hub for bad actors in the digital currency space, and we're working hard to try and change that image. That's my take.
Okay. Any last minute thoughts from the panel on sort of consolidation fragmentation? Okay, so then let's go to the next topic then. So I believe, Antony, you mentioned earlier when you started this conversation that the amount of demand for Bitcoin from Singapore sort of surprised you. So I'd like to maybe sort of broaden that out to the whole panel and say, maybe starting with Jesse, sort of where do you, we know, can you maybe outline in your opinion of what the current sort of demand centers are for Bitcoin and how you see that changing over time? Is it going to go worldwide? Is it going to be Latin America, Africa? How do you see that changing over the next year or two?
First off, Singapore. So I went to Singapore last year in May. Went to like the tech center, was it Block 39 or something like that? No one knew what Bitcoin was. It was unbelievable. And those that did know about it didn't really want to talk about it all that much either. It was really interesting. And then I went back in November this past year for the conference there. And it was amazing. Like the room was packed. There was energy. I mean, granted, I didn't go to the same two spots, but it was amazing the turnaround in that city in terms of like understanding and passion for the space, right? And you can see that too. It's largely price driven. Like when I first exposed to Bitcoin maybe 2 years ago, started hosting some of the meetups, and very small groups, 3 people. As soon as we get a little bit, the price spikes, and then all of a sudden there's 40 people in the room, and the price spikes again, and there's 200 people in the room. And I think we're going to continue to see that as the price drives people's attention and focus, and you're going to have more and more people coming to the space. I think that's obvious to anyone inside. Where's the growth going to be? So, I was just down in Buenos Aires for the conference there as well too. Countries like that where they have currency control, Bitcoin is just such an obvious step in. So, the Argentinas and Venezuelas of the world, huge adoption. There's no question there. I haven't been to Africa yet to sort of boots on the ground to see what that's going, but it sounds like there's quite a bit. New Zealand and Australia, we get probably some of the most requested countries for us are those two, which is weird because New Zealand is only 4 million people, and they probably submitted about 5% of our applications to operate an exchange. So to me, it's going to be global. Where is the adoption going to spike the most? It's where the people have the most pain. And I bet you Argentina becomes sort of ground zero in Brazil, for South America. That would be a market to really keep your eye on if you have ties to anyone down there.
Excellent, cool. Alex, you want to take a shot at where you've seen the demand sort of evolving over time?
I'll take that then. I think Bitcoin usage used to be, as we all know, driven by bad actors. The only place you could spend it was Silk Roads and the things like that. I think that's very much in the back mirror now. We're starting to see brand name or Wall Street named investors, traders, hedge funds. And I think at some stage there'll be the pension funds who want to diversify a little bit and put a percentage of their funds into digital assets. I think to Jesse's point, countries with political uncertainty for sure. I would love to see digital assets become the flight to safety. So when things are going bad, instead of buying government bonds because in some cases they don't work, or buying gold because you can't do much with it. It would be great to see digital assets become the fear index.
Excellent, cool.
Okay.
Alex, yeah, please.
Sure. So sorry for the audio there. Well, the reason we're set up the way we are is actually to serve the greater China market, and I think all the criteria that Jesse and Antony just identified around, well, capital controls being one, political uncertainty being another. This creates a huge pent-up demand, as we saw, with the activity on the mainland exchanges toward the end of last year. The question going forward is how to serve this market in a completely legal and regulated way. So I'll give the most pertinent example. If we were to serve mainland customers from Hong Kong or from Taiwan, we would be completely compliant to the foreign exchange controls of 50,000 US dollar equivalent per person per year. But even remaining within that framework, that's a massive market. If, as Antony mentioned, this could be a flight to safety for one, or a preferred investment option in the long term. So there's no question that the demand for digital products is here in the greater China region. And the only question is how to serve it in a way that's acceptable to the authorities in this part of the world.
Okay, thank you. So we're coming up on the end of our 40 minutes here, so I'd like to maybe move to our last question, and I'd like to ask you guys to sort of put on your overall Bitcoin thinking caps and say, beyond just the exchanges, sort of where do you see the major trends? What's going to be the biggest shifts in the Bitcoin or maybe altcoin community over the next 6 months to 2 years? And let's go ahead and start with Antony, please.
Sure. In the interest of time, I think we're going to see hackings. I think we'll see more jail time. I think we'll see more brand wars on the downside. On the upside, I think we'll see clarified regulation. We'll have players that are more established and more credible, and we're going to see Wall Street.
Excellent. Jesse, your thoughts on sort of what you think the next major trends shifts will be?
Sure. I think it's stuff like the Ethereum project, NXT, Mastercoin, the BitShares, those plays, and the problems that they're solving inside of Bitcoin, and whether Bitcoin itself evolves quick enough to solve those problems, or people see enough value on those other platforms to start throwing their efforts into that. I think that's really the 2.0 stuff is just getting started, and I'm really excited to see how it turns out.
Okay, and now Alex, sort of the final word on the panel before I say goodbye to everybody. What are your thoughts?
Sure, I would agree with Jesse. Things like Ethereum, we'll see the Bitcoin protocol or a similar protocol applied to applications beyond money. And to that extent, I think it's going to be a very positive spin for the whole community to get beyond the current phase of discussion, which is speculation and so forth. The fact that it has broader protocol uses, I think, is going to be a very good thing for the application we're talking about today, which is, of course, money. The other thing which Jesse made passing mention of is governments like the Canadian one, getting into the act, if anything, to give Bitcoin perhaps some competition. I think we could probably anticipate other governments contemplating such things in the next 6 to 24 months. So I wouldn't be surprised if the government of Singapore got into this, for instance, or some other government. So I think that's something else to keep an eye out for.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you. Yeah, so now that we're at the close of this, I definitely would like to thank all of our panelists for their time. You guys are all over, literally all over the world, and have made the time and energy and effort to be available for us today, so we certainly thank you for that. To all of our listeners out there, if you guys are investors that are interested in probably connecting with these companies, please feel free to reach out to us, and we can sort of maybe make the connection if that makes sense. Feel free, anybody else, to sort of send any questions you have to Venture Scanner, and we can sort of hopefully answer those for you, adjudicate those for you, and get back to you to help build this community up. Keep an eye out for future panels. And again, thank you very much, and I hope you have a good time.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Nathan.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.